What I can do is to share some of the points that we have been experiencing so far in the last 4 years when managing this issue. And I will share something about our general approach to the issue. Coming back to the previous contribution, I think it is important to say that for sure migration is not a problem. Okay, I will start with a very simple statement. That means that for sure migrating is a good opportunity for people and families to improve their condition. We're not discussing about this for sure. We also know that for some families and some people, migration is the only option. So it's not just an opportunity, but sometimes it's the only option. And I think it is important for all stakeholders to keep this point very clear in our discussion today. Another thing important to be said is that Europe is promoting labor mobility as a key element for economical growth. But 3 things: managing migration flows, putting in place integration policies in receiving countries, and guaranteeing social assistance in both sending and receiving countries are absolutely necessary in order to maximize the positive potential of mobility and to reduce the negative effects of mobility. Third point is about the method to face this issue is that it must be considered in terms of transnational welfare systems. It's something that we don't discuss so often when speaking about children left behind. But when speaking about transnational family, which is a framework maybe more interesting than simply speaking about the children, the issue of transnational welfare comes up to be very, very relevant. And I think that all of us need to encourage as much as possible cooperation among local authorities. That is something that we could experience in some situation, and I think is a very relevant starting point. Local authorities in both sending and receiving countries, in order to share good practices, to start specific training programs for families, which we found very important for the issue, promoting a better use of remittances, which is a very huge point to discuss from my point of view. And we had some very good experiences in the past. Yesterday I was meeting an Italian MEP here in the European Parliament. He's called Cofferati, maybe you know about him. He was mayor of a city of Bologna. And he told us about some good experiences in the past, for example, where helping Romanian families, even before Romania joined the European Union, helping the families to be integrated and to have the possibility to have their children back with them in Italy, and then to plan how to return to Romania and sustain this return to Romania was a process that had many opportunity to link with Romania local authorities. So I think it is important to encourage this work that is a different level. It's not a European level maybe, it's not a national level, but it's another level that is among local authorities. Another important thing that is to be said from my point of view is that the relevance of supporting transnational family. That needs specific points. One is to support families before the migration, during migration, and after migration. There are 3 points that are very different from each other and need specific attention. And a relevant point is the parenthood at distance. Okay, distance parenting, how we can call it. And we found very important to bring awareness among families about this, suggest opportunities, find out new methods to handle this distance parenting. For example, the project that she was mentioning in Italy with the organization of women Romanian women in Italy. We were somehow part of it, and also this guide that we are launching in this period you have in your folder, is, for our opinion, a good example of the kind of support that is needed in order to let Romanian families know what are the risks, and most of all, what is their role in as parents, and how this role can be interpreted in the distance. So it is important to train somehow, to raise awareness, but also to train families about how to handle the situation. Because for sure, many families will need, for what we know about the phenomenon, they need to be abroad for a certain period, and handling this parenting at the distance is very, very relevant. Another point with families is to sustain individual plans about migration and remigration and return. Also in this case, with specific training, with proper use of remittances, as I was saying before. Like, for example, we have some example of specific use of remittances for launching new activities in origin countries where families are coming back to their country. And last but sure not least is to face the issue in terms of children protection in origin countries. I think this is very important. It is important to say that we cannot hide the issue, and this is a risk that we cannot run when speaking about the origin countries, because the issue is too big and too relevant to be hidden somehow. And on the other side, we can take a look at what is already happening, the good experiences that are already running from the civil society initiatives, from the NGOs, from some local actors. There are a lot of very interesting experiences to refer to. And so from my point of view, at national level, involving properly all actors of the care system and the protection system, like social services, of course, but also caregivers, grandparents, and other caregivers, teachers, NGOs, is now a good direction for us to follow, at least at the moment, when in a period of crisis, pointing everything on the possibility, the economical possibility of member states to sustain social welfare is very risky from our point of view. So finding solution together, the institution, together with the actors of civil society, is a need, a special need today, and a lot of good experiences can be taken from this. Just a point about what could be, from our perspective, the role of European institutions. We have heard, and I agree, that this issue must be faced most of all at national level, and I understand the point. But we think that there are some issues, some points that are up to the European institutions. One is concerning to the recognition of this issue as a specific one. Okay, I think it's very important to start from here. Also, what you were saying about the national action plan facing this issue as a specific one, I think is very interesting. And from my point of view, the same could be also at the European level. That means that we cannot simply put the migration, the children left behind issue in migration policies or children's rights in a box like we usually do at European level. Because this issue needs a deep comprehension and for sure a multidimensional approach. So the first suggestion is to have a multidimensional approach at European level. Another role that is up to the European institutions is to promote studies for a better understanding of the issue. We already said about this, so I will not repeat. But I think it is important. The study is not just statistical, it's not just quantitative, but also qualitative, as we said. Another point with the European institution is to promote social experimentation. And I think it is one of the main elements of European fundings that we, as social society, can see, is the use of European fundings to promote social experimentation. Creation and diffusion of good practices, starting from the experience that are already in place, developing new approaches is something that is really important. And the role of the European institution for this, from my perspectives is very important. Last point is for sure how Europe is influencing the policies of member states, putting attention to the issue with a multi-dimensional approach, as I was saying before. And for this last point, I think that the study that we mentioned before is really interesting, because we can find inside the several pages, even though the child, the attention to the child is not so much, but the approach for our perspective is very, very interesting. There are a lot of recommendations inside the study that are really, really precise for our perspective. And so if really this study that have been made so far, but not so shared for what I see, it needs to become a relevant instrument. Not the only one from my point of view, but it is very important to understand what we do next after this. So after the European Commission has commissioned this study, and the study has brought a lot of data and a lot of recommendations, what we do next, how we use with member states, so how we are reaching national level. I think these questions are very relevant for the European Union to go further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivano.
Thanks, Jana. As you said, the study didn't have a lot in there on children. And, for example, they had data on Greek migration back in the 70s, and I think times have changed a lot since then. We do recognise the issue, and we can ensure that where relevant, for example, from the study, reading it, there's quite a focus on enlargement countries. So I've already sent it to DG Enlargement and said this is also an issue for you that you need to deal with. We do recognise it. Indeed, it isn't. Children left behind aren't cited as one of the vulnerable groups of children. There was always a risk that we were going to leave some out. We tried to add quite a lot, but there will always be new ones coming along anyway. And we will ensure that in the various policies, as I mentioned, I mean, if we talk about early childhood education and care, childcare, all these things, it should be taken into account in all of these. Promotion of studies, I'm not so hot on studies for the sake of carrying out studies. Isn't always a good idea. But maybe we also need to look at, is there anything that can be done to help parents stay in their country? Okay, they have a right to move to work, but you know, should we be doing more to allow them to remain in their home country? Should we be doing more to ensure that if they do work, they're going to places and jobs that allow them to take their children with them? In every member state, child protection and all the services are for children in the jurisdiction, so for all children. And I don't think it's a case of creating new services and for children moving back or, you know, transnational, but making use of the structures that are already there. I mean, we have to be practical and think about the costs if we were to say there should be something entirely new. But to focus on practical issues, if you're going to move as a parent, you know, if you didn't already know that you have responsibilities and what that means, how can we promote that knowledge? But we do recognise the issue and we'll take it into account if we move on and look at something by the EU on child protection systems. Obviously, we look at the role of child protection systems in general, covering all the situations. So we don't want to focus on trafficking or unaccompanied children or whatever. We would like to take a holistic approach. I think that's about all I can say at this stage.
Ideas and suggestions that came to my mind in terms of following up the recommendation on investing in children that should be implemented also through the social open method of coordination, where they have many tools for mutual learning, for exchanges of good practice. And I'm looking maybe to our representative from the Romanian I don't know if you sit on the Social Protection Committee, or your colleagues will maybe be sitting there, to propose, as one member states, that a peer review, which is one of the tools that is used for mutual learning and exchanges of good practice, could be focusing specifically on this issue and how member states are developing policies and programs that specifically support the children and families in this situation. I think that could be one of the areas, because clearly the recommendation should be implemented with tools that strengthen information and good learning and best practice. Also, if there's anything that can be done from your side, Margaret, in terms of pushing the Commission or maybe the Fundamental Rights Agency to have more data collection, more comparable data. I know there is still a huge lack in this area, and certainly we'll be looking at trying to strengthen the portfolio of indicators that are used to measure and monitor children's well-being across Europe. And I think we need to keep a very close eye on monitoring how the structural funds are being used at national level, and certainly as Eurochild, our members we're trying to help them get engaged in working with governments, with the managing authorities, to monitor the thematic priorities that they're developing within their operational programs, and hopefully in the future also looking at how the funds are being used on the ground, how we are measuring the impact of the funds at national level, and strengthening the link between how the funds are used and how we are actually achieving the goals of Europe 2020 around social inclusion, tackling poverty, and this is clearly, I think, for us, the whole agenda of poverty and social exclusion is one of the driving factors of this phenomena. And if we are trying to prevent families from being obliged, as Ivano said, to move abroad in order to give what they feel is a decent standard of living for their children, then I think that we are in a very, we need to really invest in ensuring that that is not an obligation of families. So, Margaret, I think you wanted to come in briefly just again. Sorry.
Thanks, Jana. Just with regard to data collection, for example, we're carrying out a study on missing children in the EU, and if children had gone missing because they were left behind, we would gather that data. But if member states aren't gathering that data, we certainly won't get it. So I would put the ball firmly back in the member states' court. We can gather data if member states are gathering it in the first place. We were doing quite a lot in data collection this year on missing children and children in justice, and there are huge data gaps, but we can't resolve them if the member states aren't gathering the data in the first place. So I think it's for all of us, civil society as well, you know, if you can do your bit to gather data, that would help.
Okay, thank you very much for being here this afternoon. I think it was an interesting and useful debate. I'm looking to Ivano to see if you want to say a few closing words in relation to the follow-up from this meeting.
First of all, I really want to thank you for participating. I think it was very, very interesting discussion today. I think it too. And for what is next step, for sure, we need to give continuity to this discussion, and I appreciate when MEP Antonescu was speaking about this, the necessity of keeping this attention very high. And what we have decided in last weeks is to go into the preparation of a document that can be leading the discussion about this issue for next years, because even in the change of the Parliament and the Commission, so in this moment of change, it is important to set what has already been done so far in terms of preparation of policies, in terms of good practices that have their evidence so far. So we are going into this the preparation of this document, and I think the discussion today will be an important point for this document, and I will invite personally each of you to give a contribute to this preparation, and so I think that our follow-up is going in this direction.
One of the outcomes there was really to push for 2014 to be the European Year for Reconciling Family and Working Life. This has been on the agenda, and we understand it's being blocked at the moment. Barroso has not yet approved it. Making the connection with this issue, there's no more real issue of reconciling family and working life. If you're working in one country and your family is in another country, I think this is fundamental mismatch and something that we all would be challenged by if we were forced to work in another country and our family is in another. So I would also urge us all to advocate support for that European year, and maybe if that happens, that will also be a vehicle through which we can raise the visibility of this issue. So thank you very much for your participation. I wish you a glorious Belgian, Brussels sunny evening, and we will all keep in touch. Thank you.